On the vast ocean, Biru's wild sprint sailed across the great waters. It bore witness to a fair share of conflicts and disagreements, inevitably surrendering to the unfathomable ocean. With disastrous tragedies, growing tensions, bursts of energy, and a great deal of excitement, this is the Age of Exploration! Hello everyone, welcome to Taiwan Bar. Today we're going to talk about someone who is pretty much a household name in Taiwan, Zheng Chenggong. You can find Chenggong Road everywhere in Taiwan. From kindergartens to universities, schools are named after Zheng Chenggong. Zheng Chenggong is everywhere to be seen. But Zheng Chenggong didn't stay long in Taiwan. From the day he set foot on Taiwan to the day he died, it was merely 13 months. Huh? Only a little more than a year? Exactly. Then why does he have such a great reputation? What were his achievements? Let's begin. To understand the protagonist of this episode, we first have to talk about his father, Zheng Zhilong. Zhilong was born and raised on the coast of Fujian and lived off of the ocean when he was young. He joined a pirate crew. Pirates back then did more than just plunder, loot, and kidnap. Unlike Straw Hat Luffy's elastic body helping him grab treasures left and right, nor were they like the pirates off the coast of Somalia, infamous for kidnapping and asking for ransoms. The pirate crew Zheng Zhilong joined were both merchants and pirates. They sailed around with their goods and partook in commerce. If you were a potential business partner, they would be willing to do business nicely with you. Everything would go smoothly. But if not, deal? No deal. For sale? Not for sale. Well, that would usually lead to looting, killing, and pillaging. In 1625, Zheng Zhilong climbed his way up to the top of the pirate crew. Some believe that he was appointed by Yan Siqi to become the next pirate captain. Some believed he inherited or perhaps usurped Li Dan's power. Anyways, Zheng Zhilong was like Blackbeard in One Piece, who became one of the 4 emperors and turned into the overlord of the sea. After being at sea for 3 years, Zheng Zhilong amassed so much power that he was recruited by the Ming Dynasty and became a guerrilla general. Since then, Zheng Zhilong became more than just a pirate or a merchant, he also became part of the navy. Instantly leveled up. From then on, Zhilong joyfully waved his new official banner and did his utmost to overthrow the other powerful players at sea. In 1635, he wiped out Liu Xiang's pirate crew and became the dominant power of the East Asian seas. Merchant had to pay protection money to cross the sea. You had to sail with Zheng's banner to sail without a worry and get home in one piece. In the beginning of the 17th century, the port of Hirado was the only exit point that Chinese pirates used to trade with Japan. Just like most of the seafarers, young Zhilong got married to a Japanese woman and gave birth to a little boy. In 1624, Zheng Chenggong was born. It was also the year that the Va came to Taiwan. Back in Japan, Zheng Chenggong had not been given his Chinese name yet. Instead, he had a nickname, Fukumatsu, a little boy of Chinese and Japanese descent. He grew up happily in Japan. His dad was always away working and fighting. Zheng Zhilong was never home. Little Fukumatsu was always by himself. It wasn't until Fukumatsu turned 7 that Zhilong, as if he finally remembered, "Oh right, my son's still in Japan." So he sent someone to bring little Fukumatsu to the Ming Empire. Our little Fukumatsu was bestowed a new name, Zhensen. After going to China, Zhilong hoped that his son would focus on his studies. He was a great student indeed, and just like that, patriotism and nationalism became engraved in Zhensen's heart. Even after the fall of the Ming Dynasty, Zhensen remained steadfast and firm. On the other hand, Zheng Zhilong, well, he wasn't just any ordinary merchant. He was the typical fence-sitter. Ever heard of merchants have no country? The Qing Dynasty rose with the fall of the Ming Dynasty. Of course, Zheng Zhilong swore fealty to the new power. After all, the official banners were just neat decorations. They weren't worth much anyways. But Zhensen, who had embraced Confucianism, well, he had a very different way of thinking. Not long ago, the Prince of Tang inherited the Ming Dynasty and bestowed Zhensen a new name with the emperor's last name, Zhu Chenggong, and thus the title we so often hear today, Koxinga. You just can't swear allegiance to a dynasty today and change tomorrow, so from Fukumatsu to Zhensen and later to the prestigious Koxinga, Zheng Chenggong's patriotic legacy went down in history. Patriotism became his core value. In 1646, Zhilong surrendered to the Qing Dynasty. Instead of gaining the recognition he desired, he was betrayed, captured, and detained in Beijing. And his home in Anping was seized by the Qing Dynasty troops. Zheng Chenggong was furious when he found out about this. He tossed his scholar's robe to the flames and proclaimed that he would cast the pen for the sword. He then expressed his grief at the temple as if he was laying out his case before the gods. From then on, he made it his quest to overthrow the Qing Dynasty and restore the righteous Ming Dynasty. Even though he only controlled a small portion of land, however, by taking over his father's sea shenanigans, he amassed a great fortune from his dealings at the sea. That allowed him to fight against the Qing Dynasty for over a decade. In In 1659, during the Battle of Nanjing, Zheng Chenggong took control over the north of the Yangtze River. He came close to rewriting history, but seemed like a winning battle turned sideways and he eventually lost it all. After his defeat, Zheng Chenggong managed to survive and made his way back to Xiamen. This defeat had doomed the restoration of the Ming dynasty and shaped Taiwan's history. In search of a larger land, Zheng Chenggong fixed his eyes on Taiwan, the island on which his father had once engaged in piracy. 2 years later, Zheng Chenggong's troops arrived in Taiwan. To avoid the artillery fires from Fort Zealandia, Zheng Chenggong captured Provincia through the Luermen Tunnel and made it the central government of Taiwan. You might know it as the Shikan Tower. They then laid siege to Fort Zealandia and began to manage the place. First, they went to the countryside to loot for money and food. Then the troops farmed for themselves to be self-sufficient. The troops also massacred the aboriginal tribes that wouldn't recognize their authority. The local Chinese were asked to pay more taxes. Under Zheng Chenggong's rule, Taiwan became more and more uninhabitable for the islanders. A regime at war requires massive resources, but the Taiwanese were the ones who paid the price. They were under constant threats of invasion, and they were constantly paying taxes. The only difference was the ruling faction, either the Bak or Zheng Chenggong. However, a year after Zheng Chenggong's arrival, he passed away, thus ending his journey in Taiwan. The majority of the governance work was passed on to his son Zheng Jing and the wise chancellor and strategist Chen Yonghua. Hold up, let me clarify something. Zheng Chenggong, who had been through the ringer so many times, what could have possibly taken his life? Rumor has it that Zheng Chenggong died of illness. Some say he was poisoned or scratched his face in shame, died with a thunderous roar. The most plausible explanation is that he died of illness. His death was abrupt. It seems that we can only take a guess from his mental state at the time. At the beginning of 1662, there was wave after wave of bad news. First, Zheng Chenggong's father Zheng Zhilong and his brothers were all murdered by the Qing emperor. His relatives also one by one surrendered to the Qing dynasty. The Ming dynasty's last hope, Zhu Youlang, the last emperor of the southern Ming, also perished during this time. All the prominent figures have passed. Zheng Chenggong, who adhered to Confucianism, had lost his family, and the country he was loyal to no longer existed. It wasn't about what he should have done, there was basically nothing he could have done. Other than that, his eldest son Zheng Jing had an affair with his brother's wet nurse in Xiamen. They even had a baby. After becoming aware of this incest, Zheng Chenggong couldn't overlook his son's outrageous behavior and ordered the general in Xiamen to bring back his son's head. But who would dare to kill one's master's son? And the general's disobedience worsened Zheng Chenggong's already failing health. Zheng Chenggong, who once had tens of thousands of men, could have been a great leader. No one could have foreseen this twist of fate. I guess whether it was scratching his face or screaming to death, either way would sound quite reasonable. With all that being said, of course Zheng Chenggong isn't the saint we all think he is. He was harsh, listened to and believed in slanders, he was also vengeful, he massacred indigenous people, looted and pillaged Chinese coastal villages, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But he did set the standard for patriotism in that era. Zheng Chenggong gave his life to the Ming dynasty. His presence in Taiwan ushered in a new era in Taiwan in which the Chinese became the dominant power. This also explains why the Chinese community in Taiwan look up to Zheng Chenggong so much. But then, it was a tragedy for the indigenous people. When we were younger, we used to see things in black and white, good or evil, nothing in between. But humans are complex beings. Who are we to judge who's good or bad? Humans are prone to herd mentality, praising or cursing along with the majority. What is it that we can do to truly see into a historical figure that we can come closer to historical authenticity? Alrighty, with that being said, I'm a bit thirsty. Let me glug down this glass of wine. See you next time around. Ganbei!